it seems totally normal to listen to a podcast about the Toronto Argonauts. It's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos podcast. My name is Ben Grant, joined by my co-host JB, and we're excited to bring you another season of Toronto Argonauts football as we break everything down here on the X's and Argos podcast. JB, how you doing?
I'm well. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's hopefully going to be an actual season of football this year, so I'm excited.
I think so. I think they're going to find a way to make it happen, following the lead of other leagues, and I'm excited to get into it because, my gosh, things have been turned upside down in the league.
No kidding. It has been a crazy last few days, and we've got a ton of stuff to talk about. So let's get right into things, talking about the Argos quarterback situation, because when we last spoke, Matt Nichols was our quarterback. We were looking forward to several years of Matt Nichols at the helm, perhaps, and then everything went sideways just a few days ago. So Matt Nichols is released. Nick Arbuckle in Ottawa is released, and suddenly Matt Nichols signs in Ottawa. Arbuckle signs in Toronto. It's sort of a trade without a trade, and now both teams have a new starting quarterback. And I think that they both are in a much better situation. I like Matt Nichols, and I was cheering for him. I was excited for him to be an Argo, but he's in a much better situation for his skill set in Ottawa with Paul LaPolice. And I think there's no question that Arbuckle is in a better situation in Toronto under Coach Dinwiddie, because it's an offense he knows, the system he knows, and he suits it better. That vertical downfield passing game is what Arbuckle does well, and it was something that Nichols just didn't. So, I think it's a great move for both quarterbacks. I think it's a great move for both organizations, and it's so rare that you can say that.
The Matt Nichols era was short, not very sweet. It certainly put a damper on our Matt Nichols interview plans.
It does. And I also had to scrap my Matt Nichols video piece that I was working on in preparation for the season.
But it's correcting a mistake. Ottawa pulled a fast one, and they tried to dunk on, or not tried to, they dunked on the Argos, swiping him back at the draft. And I don't know. Maybe I guess the Zoom meetings with Arbuckle weren't everything they hoped they would be, and they decided that maybe he was not the one for them moving forward. I don't know what to read into that. Whether it's pure money, and Ottawa just couldn't afford to keep him. Hopefully, that's the reason. But it's great.
I think it is. I think that has to be it.
Or poor Zoom etiquette.
Yeah, but how bad does your Zoom meeting have to be for you to say, "Whoa, I don't know about," I don't think that's going to happen. He's a professional quarterback. He's 27 years old. He's been in the Calgary system for 3 or 4 years. I don't think anything could have happened in a Zoom meeting where they're like, "Oh, let's get a new quarterback."
I love it. Little quarterback beef, little heat in those Ottawa Argo games.
I feel bad for anyone that bought a Matt Nichols jersey.
I think people should only buy jerseys that have no names on the back in the CFL.
It's hard, but that's something that, and we're way off topic again here, but I love that the Argos finally have brought that in, where you can now, with a drop-down menu, buy Argos jerseys with current Argos players, which I think is great, because for forever that's been unavailable. You had to go out and customize it yourself if you wanted to do something like that, which just isn't the way a professional football organization should run things, where you can't buy jerseys of the current players. So now you can, but like you're saying, something has to change within the CFL where the whole team isn't new every year. For fans to be inclined to buy these jerseys, because otherwise you get what you see when you look around BMO, where it's all Pinball Clemens and jerseys from stars of the past, because no one wants to buy a current jersey.
I think it's great in that you're right. This is the guy they wanted. This was the package deal that they thought they were getting. and now there can be no caveats to this era. He has his quarterback. Now let's evaluate what they are as a team.
And just to go through, for those who don't know much about Nick Arbuckle, what he brings that is different and why he suits this offense. So Arbuckle is very similar to Nichols in their sort of build and stature. They're not tall guys. They're not particularly fast guys. But Arbuckle's got some really good arm strength. And so what you see when you look at his film is making great throws downfield. And Nichols was more of a guy that was going to pick a defense apart with those short underneath throws, crossing routes. And with Arbuckle, it's more verticals. And Coach Dinwiddie's offense, if we're correct in thinking it's going to be like Calgary's offense, features a lot of those vertical concepts. And it just wasn't going to play into what Nichols' strengths are. He's a guy that wants to read zones, pick them apart, and sort of work your way downfield. Arbuckle is going to tear up those sort of big chunk plays, high lows on the free safety, get the ball downfield, and so it's a perfect fit for his offense, and his numbers are excellent. Like they're right up there with anyone in the league when you're looking at vertical passing, at downfield throws. So I would like there to be a bit more of a sample size on Arbuckle. Like, it wasn't a guy that we've got to see play for the last 5 years. Nichols, exactly what you're getting. There's a little bit more certainty there, but I think the ceiling on Arbuckle is higher. And like you're saying, it's the perfect fit, and there's no more excuse now. He's the guy. This is the quarterback Coach Dinwiddie wanted. He's got him. Let's see what you can do, Coach. And
his name fits perfectly into the Argos chant.
Yeah, they've already taken advantage of that. I've seen a few variations of it, but yes, the Arbuckle.
I mean, I hope,
if there are fans in the stands, you will hear that chant a lot on like big completions and stuff. Or it's perfect.
Or ironically.
Hopefully not. So let's get into some of the other moves that the Argos made, because obviously that's the biggest and that's the one we wanted to talk about first. But the Argos have made some really significant signings, and it feels so strange because we never had the 2020 season. It's kind of like recrafting or rebuilding feels weird without having actually had a chance to see the product that was ready to go last year. Like the team was set. Remember that there were no more moves to be made. So everyone that we had on the roster was going to be that, that was the team last year. And to go out and then make all these changes, you kind of think, well, why? What's prompting these? And all of the big signings that we now have, which are undoubtedly exciting, are on the offensive side of the ball. Now, that makes sense because you and I agreed last year that the offense wasn't as strong as the defense. It didn't look nearly as strong as the defense did last year. But I would say in the last few weeks, that has flipped entirely on its head. So let's look through the offensive signings. So the biggest non-Arbuckle signing for the Argos on the offense is Martavis Bryant. So this is a wide receiver, most notably with the Pittsburgh Steelers, played a little bit with the Raiders, and just had trouble staying active, and that he was suspended a couple of different times. And he hasn't played football in a little while, and he looks in great shape. He reportedly is still running a 4.3, which, in receiver talk, that probably means a 4.4, but that's still great. And he's 6'4", wonderful target, a good route runner, good hands. It's an exciting player to have on board. And when you add him to the other pieces that we've got here, because receiver is one of those strong positional groups the Argos have, it's going to be, the camp battles at receiver are going to be crazy. But you can also see a sort of type that they're going for here, because not long after bringing in Bryant, they bring in Eric Rogers. And so now you've got both those guys who are 6'4", Jawan Breskison, who's 6'4". So you got three guys who are almost certainly going to start, all three of those guys at 6'4". DeVaris Daniels is going to start as well, and he's 6'2". You've got a lot of tall receiving targets to cover. I don't envy opposing DBs who have to go and line up, especially CFL DBs, where we have a lot of 5'9", 5'10" guys that have to now go up against a guy that's half a foot taller.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I think that Brian is a good lottery ticket, and if he's got his kind of act together and really wants to use this opportunity to restart his career, I think that's an unbelievable signing.
So he says he has matured. He's 29 years old now. He's, I think, maybe looking back and seeing some of the mistakes that he made and realizes he's only got a few years left and he still wants to play football. And so, this is an opportunity for him to do that. The only worry I have is that sometimes players who have success in the NFL, like he had, think that the CFL is going to be easy. And it just isn't. And players that have that attitude coming in inevitably will fail, because it's not the same thing as going from the Major League Baseball into the minor leagues or the NBA into the G League. And if you come into the CFL thinking, well, I'm just going to run through this league and no one's going to be able to stop me, I think you're going to be very surprised at the level of talent here, because every time Bryant lines up, he's going to get the absolute best from whoever's on the other side of the ball, because for them, every snap, this is their chance. This is their opportunity to show that they can play against a proven NFL receiver. So it is not going to be easy for him. So if he's ready to go, I think he's going to be great. But if he's taking this lightly at all, I think he's going to be disappointing. And I'm hoping that's not the case.
I agree. I think that when guys come up to the CFL from the NFL, they have the same opinion that a lot of fans do, is that the CFL is like the AHL, that it's not as good as the NHL. But that's just not the case. The CFL is elite. It just happens to have smaller players, that everybody is sized down. But the speed and the reaction and the intelligence, all of that is NFL quality. So hopefully he's ready for that, and hopefully they're ready to make him a star. I think that's the big thing, is if he's coming up here, he should be a focus of the offense.
And if he is, and you're forcing teams now to account for that, I love what the Argos are going to be able to do everywhere else, because they've got so many weapons that they can spread out. And if you have to, the result of this is single coverage on Breskison and Eric Rogers and DeVaris Daniels. There's going to be trouble. And let's talk about Eric Rogers. We'll transition to him. So that's a recent move, picking up Eric Rogers from Calgary. He's another nice piece for me. He's not the same receiver as Johan Breskison. They have different strengths, but he is a proven red zone target. He's just fantastic in the red zone. He's great at catching touchdowns. He's a nice big target. He's got good hands. He's got great reach. And you just add him to all these other 6'4" receivers, and it's hard to throw the ball and not have it land in somebody's hands with the catch radius that all these guys have. So, yeah, Eric Rogers is a really nice piece, and I think what adding him does is it gives you a lot of different options in terms of the look that you can put out there. So if we're going to assume that Rogers, Bryant, Breskison, and Daniels are on the field, and I think that's pretty safe, then you can now, with your fifth receiver, you've got a lot of really interesting possibilities. Now, I hope they find a way to bring back Nataya J, because he's a guy that I think can really add something special to this group. I think that his versatility, he can be that downfield receiver. I love him on seams and posts and corners, something that he didn't really get to do a lot of in Edmonton. They had him running a lot of short routes, drags and outs and quick slants, and that's just not really his game. But he can do that stuff if need be. He's got some great agility, and he's sort of a nice, mix-up piece in there. But then we've also got Brissett who we just drafted, who's got a lot of speed. He'd be an exciting addition to that group of four. You could go big with a guy like Vince Malle, who's got size and some real bulk to add in with these guys. And again, you've got Malle out there as a receiver with these four guys. I don't know who you match up with as a defense. I don't know. I don't know who you put. No defensive unit in the CFL has five guys that can match up with those five guys if you've got them all out there together. So yeah, Rodgers is a really interesting piece as the Argos sort of try and mold their receiving core as this group of giants that they're daring teams to try and cover.
It's a terrific potential. Like anything in football, it's all about chemistry. It's hard. You don't have a quarterback who is a veteran to kind of set the room. And so that can often be a volatile situation if the wide receivers feel that they have more weight or more say than a first-year quarterback. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I think best case scenario, amazing. But I always worry about personalities and football is it's not a fantasy league. You're bringing in all sorts of people from other locations. It doesn't necessarily automatically gel into what you hope.
And you're right, except I think that there is a bit of an asterisk this year because last year that was the concern. I said last year, I actually liked the team quite a lot last year, but I acknowledged it was going to take about 6 games for the offense, at the very least, to figure things out because there were so many new pieces. The difference this year is it's still the same case in Toronto, but that's now the case with every other team. You look at every other roster in the CFL, and they haven't played football in over a year. Everybody is going to be going through those growing pains now. So in a way, by not having a season last year, the Argos have caught up, or at least maybe everyone else is kind of caught down, and everybody is going to take a few weeks to get things sorted out. So I don't see us starting the season like 0-6 like we may have last year before figuring things out and getting things together. I actually think we're going to be in the same place as every other group. Now it's still putting pieces together, and there's still going to be some chemistry that needs to be built. But I don't think these guys look at Arbuckle as a first year quarterback, right? Like they're excited as well. You look at what these players were talking about on Twitter; they were really excited because they believe that they're getting something special in Arbuckle. They're excited to play with him, especially the guys that are coming from Calgary, which is a pretty large percentage of our team. They are thrilled that he's going to be the quarterback. And he's 27. He's not like a 22-year-old who hasn't had any experience. He was with the Stamps for several years before kind of getting his shot last year and making something of himself. So I feel good.
He's not a rookie, but he hasn't done anything in the league. And, these receivers are, they're men. These are professional football players with resumes. And so I agree. If Arbuckle can show his stuff, then I think it'll be fine. But, these guys aren't rookies in the way that Arbuckle is in terms of professional starting experience. So I am hopeful that it gels, but also I think that, they're going to be demanding of him and he better be ready for that challenge.
So let's talk about the addition in the backfield. Kenneth Dixon was brought in the offseason to add to a stable that currently includes Bishop Sankey, Carlos Williams, and AJ Ouellette.
Marcus Allen, too, I think. Isn't he in there?
Yeah, I know you like to think these guys are old. Bishop Sankey and Carlos Williams, I acknowledge, are starting to get up there, and they've got an injury history. Kenneth Dixon is not old. He's a couple years younger than both those guys. He has some injury issues. I think he ended each of his last 3 seasons on injured reserve. But like I said last year, and now I'm even more convinced that this is going to work. Those 3 guys especially, nothing against Ouellette, but Dixon, Sankey, and Williams have the potential, all three of them have the potential to be elite because they all were at one point. Now, they've all had injuries, they've all aged a little bit, but you just need one. If just one of those guys hits, and I'm starting to think, I was on Team Sankey last year, and I'm starting to think now Dixon is where my money's going to go, just because he's a few years younger, and we'll see what he can do. But all it takes is one. If one of those guys hit, the potential is huge.
Yeah, my reservations about our running backfield remain. I'm excited about our wide receivers. I'm happy about Arbuckle. I am, they're taking some shots. I'm not crazy about the backfield. Hopefully I'm proven wrong, but I don't think they have figured out the backfield yet.
I can't believe you're not excited about this backfield. I don't think I've ever been more excited about a football backfield in my life.
I've had our entire backfield on a variety of fantasy teams and cut them. They are the fantasy waiver squad.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think it's a fantastic scenario because I don't think there's any way that at least one of these guys doesn't hit. If not two or potentially all three. So we'll see. That's another camp battle I'm very excited about.
Well,
and especially
maybe a year off works for Sankey and Williams, but I don't know.
But Dixon alone, you look at his resume, he was Mr. Football in Arkansas. He set all kinds of NCAA records for, I think he's second all time in rushing touchdowns or something crazy like that. And he's got some serious speed. His knock against him was, I think he had some trouble hanging onto the ball in Baltimore. But that's something that you can teach. That's something you can learn. It's not the same as, having a problem like speed or size where you can't really do much about it. He did end up with some injury issues, but each one of them seemed to be sort of a freak thing. And, those things happen in football. So, I think he's in a really good situation, and he's young enough where he's got another chance to get back to the NFL. And I think that's what's going to be driving him. So I expect him to arrive in shape, ready to go. And, that's where I'd put my money. But I'm just as happy with Sankey and Williams. So we'll see. I think you'll be eating your words.
There's not a long list of guys who washed out of the NFL who come up to the CFL and succeed. That a lot of the majority of successful CFL guys are drafted and start their career and end their career in the CFL. And, I hope that those guys can reverse the trend, but it certainly is not a given that a guy washes out of the NFL and comes up and is able to play.
The last guy I want to talk about is Cody Speller, who I think is probably the least, celebrated. There wasn't, a big parade when we acquired Cody Speller, but this signing may actually have a bigger impact than the others we've talked about, even bigger than Martavis Bryant, because Cody Speller is a center and a good center, and finally a guy that can replace Sean McEwen after we went last year through all the various options where, we were talking about, Philip Blake has played some center. We talked about maybe Ty Allen stepping in or Eric Starzala being able to play center. But we didn't really have an answer. It was these guys have played or can play center. And here we've got Cody Speller, who is a center, was a terrific center at McMaster, played center for Winnipeg, played really well, played in meaningful games. He's only, I think, 26 and, potentially the Argos center for the next few years. And that now solidifies an offensive line, which was initially a position of weakness. And now when you put Dariusz Bladek and Philip Blake on either side of Speller, you've got Jamal Campbell, Isaiah Cage, and 5 or 6 other guys that really could step in and play either guard or tackle. Suddenly the offensive line looks excellent.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's amazing how the whole thing has flipped. That we went from a defensive juggernaut, but we went from a team that looked like it was going to be a problem defensively with a lot of learning on offense, and they've totally flipped it.
Well, let's take a look at the defensive side of the ball because, yeah, I have some serious concerns. I was looking at my depth chart from last year. I put out a depth chart a couple times during the year last year. And when I look at my most recent depth chart, there are only 3 guys who I had as starters on the defense who are currently signed by the team, who are currently on the team. That's not a good situation. But not only are we missing those starters, in many cases, we're missing their backups. So just going through it here, we got, Ryan Davis, who I had as penciled in as a starting defensive tackle. He opted out this year. Drake Nevis is unsigned, who I had playing next to him on the D-line. Alex Bazzi is still unsigned. Craig Rowe, who we both love, is unsigned. Earl O'Kine was released. Fabian Foote, he's gone as well. That's a giant hole in the defensive line. I just named like 6 guys who were potential starters on the defensive line, and they're all gone. So you're missing like starter and backup at 3 or 4 different positions up front. And then the linebacker situation is even worse. I had Chris Aki, Jeff Knox Jr., and Keenan Gilchrist or Bo Lacombo, and all 4 of those guys are gone too, or at least unsigned at this point. Aki's unsigned. Gilchrist was released. Jeff Knox Jr. was released, obviously. Bo Lacombo's gone. So our linebackers are all gone. And then into the secondary, Tommy Campbell, who I was probably the most excited about last year, retired. You got Woodson unsigned. And so it's really just Alden Darby, Shaq Richardson, and Matt Boateng. I love all 3 of those guys, but that's all we've got on the defense right now in terms of proven. And and Boateng's not even proven. So really it's just Shaq and Darby.
I think that they looked at that roster from 2 years ago and wanted to get rid of it all, but couldn't because they had to play football. And I think that that's what this is. I think that they have a plan for the type of players they want and took advantage of the shutdown to basically start over. So I think potentially it's exciting if they know exactly what it is they're looking for. But it's a huge problem if you have a whole team of rookies trying to defend in the CFL. Like you're just not going to have any success with 8 rookies starting.
We have Bear Woods. And so you've got a veteran presence, a leader in the locker room. It's something. And so, if you start building, and again, we should say, like, it's very early. Like, obviously, this isn't the roster we're going to war with. The painting is only half finished. And so I think now we're going to see the offense is essentially complete. You're not going to see much more in the way of offensive signings. Hopefully, Natea J. But beyond that, I don't think we're going to see too much. But now we can start building the defense, and they have to. They just don't have bodies, let alone starters. So we're going to see defensive signings. We're going to see a defensive line get built, and I think a lot of the guys that we've got currently unsigned, I wouldn't be surprised to see Bazzi and Rowe and Nevis all sign contracts. I wouldn't be surprised to see Aki back.
Right. I mean, it could just be that. It could just be money. Could just be they're using their leverage and, they're going to re-sign everybody for less, which is, not great from a team morale point of view. I hope it's not that in truth. I hope what it is they felt an imbalance, that you had a veteran defense and a really inexperienced offense. And I think what they're hopefully looking to do is try and create a team that is close in age on both sides of the ball that will grow together, which makes more sense. It makes more sense. It makes no sense to have a great veteran defense if your offense is going to take a year to figure it out.
I think when I'm looking around the league at other free agents, there's not a ton of guys that I would want to bring in that are better than the guys that I've talked about that that we haven't signed yet or that we did release. Any names strike you?
Well, there are. I guess it's a question what the philosophy is. Like, there are a number of linebackers who are available, but they're all 31. And so the question becomes, is it that they didn't like who they had, or were they looking to get younger? And, so like you look at a guy like Larry Dean or Justin Tuggle, those guys would be fantastic in the middle of the field. But they're 31, and this will be a test of whether it was just they didn't like the player or they didn't like the age. For me, I love a couple of Alouettes, truthfully, or former Alouettes. I would love to see them bring in Patrick Levels, kind of a tweener. He's young, fast. I think he would be a great addition. You and I talked about Enoch Mwamba from Montreal. I think, he's 31, and, it's a question of how young do you want to go? But you're going to need some veterans on that team. I don't think you can have everybody being 25, but, I think it speaks to, in terms of Jack Cassar getting a real shot, I think that's what it speaks to.
Yeah, there's a couple of young guys there too, and don't forget about Jason Beck too, out of Eastern Michigan, a guy that we haven't had a chance to see yet. Between those two guys, Cassar and Beck, I would love to see if at least one of the two of them could make it, and you put them next to Woods for now, and maybe we can add somebody, one of these another guy that's Bear's age. At least in the short term, while some of these younger guys learn the ropes.
Yeah, I think you want to have your linebackers knowing what they're doing. You don't want your linebackers learning the game as a young player. Not if you want to win. And if you look at the offense, that offense is built to win.
Yeah, the offense is ready to win. The defense, we'll see what comes of this. And I think we're going to probably be talking about the defense over each of the next few weeks as we start to add pieces. But I think the goal right now has to be, we've got a couple of young guys. We have to sort of pick and choose maybe a few veterans to bring in to go to if things are going sideways, or, just simply to teach these young guys what they need to know, to show them, to lead by example. And then, maybe see if they're ready to pass the torch or not. But
I think we're going to see no veteran signings. My take on it
at linebacker
is that on defense, I think they're looking to build this thing from scratch, and they've got a couple of veterans still who can still ball, and they're just going to try and build this thing up with the type of player that they want. I really think that's the case. Now, we'll see if they're any good at picking players, but honestly, I think we're going to get a lot of young new guys, and they're going to try and mold them into a unit as opposed to a patchwork of free agents.
See, I don't think that. I think by the time we talk next week, I think Bazzi and Nevis are going to be under contract, and probably Aki as well. And maybe one more guy from the guys that we've released. But I expect it to be, in the end, a lot of the guys that are unsigned, I think will be brought back. But we'll see. I'm excited for both possibilities. For different reasons, but that's what I think is going to happen. So we'll have to see next week when we record. We'll see who has been added, because there's no question there will be defensive signings over the next 7 days.
Well, we've already seen that although there is a cap, I think MLSE with deep pockets puts the Argos in an advantageous position right now.
Oh, especially in the offseason, because there is, the cap doesn't matter.
Right.
And so you can bring in a billion guys.
I think teams are less likely to sign free agents because they're worried about keeping the lights on. And the Argos are not worried about keeping the lights on. And so they may be cleaning the roster because they feel like there's going to be some real free agent talent out there that other teams aren't willing to pay for. Look at the haul we got from Calgary and the fact that we got Arbuckle. Those are both purely financial transactions.
All right, so as we end the first podcast episode of the 2021 season, I think it's appropriate that we make a season prediction at this point.
Yeah.
Would you like to go first or second?
Are we predicting if there's going to be a season? Is that what we're predicting?
Well, let's assume there will be. Let's be positive and assume there will be. I honestly can't see there not being after the CFL has seen how every other league is able to run and sort of learn from the successes and mistakes of everyone else. I think they should be able to put the league together in some way.
If you look at the NHL, and the NHL is now no longer in a bubble, right? The NHL is existing outside of the bubble, but a Canada only bubble. Obviously the model is there to be followed and emulated.
Right. So I think it'll be fine. There are going to be problems. There are going to be little hiccups here and there, but I think the season will happen. So that being said, how do the Argos do this year?
Yeah, assuming all 18 games get played, which I feel is probably overly optimistic, I would have come up with a more creative schedule. But we'll see what they're able to do. I think that the Argos will go 8-10.
8-10. Okay, I think that's fair. I can see, I can see why you're being conservative and hesitant to predict more wins than that. I think there's still some holes to patch. I think this is an offensive-driven league, and I think this Argos offense is going to be something special. But I do think it's going to take a little bit to get going. That said, I think they're going to go 11-7. And I think, they're obviously into the playoffs at that record. And I think
they can beat up on Montreal and Ottawa, but who else are these wins coming from?
I think they can go toe to toe with anybody. Like, look, who's going to defend this Toronto offense? Who's going to stop this Toronto offense once they get rolling? I think 11-7 is conservative. So I expect to see them. I expect to see them in the East Final. I think that's a good goal for them. And you can laugh all you like, but I think you'll see, come midsummer, I think you're going to change your tune a little bit.
Do you have your carbon monoxide filter plugged in?
I think everything's working just fine. Right. I feel confident with that. I think 11-7. I don't think they're going to have too much trouble getting to. I think it's going to be a slightly slow start, and then they're just going to roll. And I just don't think teams are going to be able to keep up with them.
Well,
so there's my official prediction. And just a note on the schedule, like you're saying, the schedule may change. Like we've already seen that, combines and the draft, like everything's going to get pushed back. So the season may not start when it's scheduled to start. So we may see schedule adjustments. We may see a shortened season. Maybe it ends up being 14 games or something like that. Who knows?
It's just really hard for the CFL because the rosters are so huge. You look at the NHL, which has 25 guys, and the NBA, which has 15 guys. It's just exponentially harder to keep 55 guys on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, it is. And it's easier still in the NFL where you've got a budget of millions just devoted to, being COVID free. And, the CFL obviously doesn't have that kind of money to throw around. So it's a more difficult ask. But yeah, assuming that they can get it through, I feel good about the Argos. at the very least making the playoffs, but I expect them to be playing in the East Final this year. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Make sure we hold on to this recording.
I think I will rejoice when I have to bring this up in October. We're listening back to this at your measly prediction of 8 wins, I think you said.
I think 8 was a very generous improvement on the previous season. But let's, I may even change that depending on what happens over the next week. I think a lot will happen between now and next week.
Agreed. And I guess we'll see when we talk next. So that will do it for us today on the X's and Argos podcast. Again, we thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell every Argo fan you know to make sure they listen to the X's and Argos podcast weekly on your favorite podcast app. For JB, I'm Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.